The wind was howling across the lonely cemetery that evening, and something strange immediately caught my attention. I had come expecting silence, memories, and maybe a few painful thoughts about my past. Instead, I heard quiet sobbing echoing between the old headstones like a secret waiting to be uncovered. Standing near my father's grave was a janitor in worn clothes, holding a broom beside him. His shoulders trembled as if the weight of the world rested heavily upon them. I froze for a moment, wondering why a stranger would cry at my father's grave. The sky turned darker as clouds rolled slowly across the fading golden sunset. Something about that scene felt deeply unsettling yet strangely important. I stepped closer, curiosity mixing with a quiet sense of unease. What I was about to discover would change the way I saw everything. And believe me, I never expected that visit to uncover a story far bigger than mine. You see, I rarely visited this cemetery despite the enormous legacy my father left behind. My father had been respected by many, feared by some, and admired by almost everyone. As one of the richest men in the state, his name still carried enormous influence. But to me, he was simply the man who raised me after my mother died. When he passed away 3 years earlier, the world mourned a billionaire businessman. Yet I mourned a father who quietly read books late into the night. Every visit to his grave reopened memories that never truly healed inside me. That evening was supposed to be a quick visit before heading back to the city. I brought flowers like always, expecting nothing unusual to interrupt my routine. But life sometimes hides its biggest surprises in the quietest places imaginable. The janitor didn't notice me at first because he was too busy wiping tears. His rough hands gripped the edge of the gravestone like someone holding on to hope. His uniform looked faded, clearly worn from years of hard work and exhaustion. Nearby sat a small lunchbox and an old photograph placed carefully on the grass. I slowly approached until my footsteps crunched softly on the gravel path. That's when he looked up, startled, his eyes red from crying uncontrollably. For a second he looked terrified, like he had been caught doing something wrong. I gently told him there was no need to be afraid or embarrassed. After all, I was the one interrupting his private moment at my father's grave. But when he heard who I was, something unexpected happened. His expression shifted from fear to disbelief faster than I could understand. He stared at me for a long moment, studying my face like a puzzle piece. Then he whispered softly that I looked exactly like my father when he was younger. That sentence alone sent a chill racing down my spine immediately. I asked him how he knew my father well enough to say something like that. Most people recognized my father from business magazines and newspaper interviews. But the way this janitor spoke sounded deeply personal and strangely emotional. He hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the gravestone carefully. Finally he said my father had saved his life many years ago. I frowned slightly, confused, because my father rarely talked about heroic actions. The janitor took a slow breath, preparing to reveal something clearly painful. And that was when the truth slowly began unfolding between us. He explained that 15 years earlier he had been homeless and desperate. His young daughter had fallen terribly sick while they were living inside an abandoned building. Hospitals refused treatment because he couldn't afford even the smallest payment. He wandered the streets searching for help, feeling completely invisible to the world around him. One rainy afternoon he collapsed outside my father's office building from exhaustion. Security guards wanted to push him away like another unwanted beggar. But my father walked outside personally and stopped them before they could act. Instead of ignoring him, my father sat down beside him in the pouring rain. That moment changed everything for the struggling father standing before me. My father quietly paid for the daughter's full medical treatment without asking anything in return. According to the janitor, that single act saved both their lives forever. As he told the story, tears rolled down his face without any attempt to hide them. He said his daughter survived because of that unexpected kindness from a stranger. Afterward, my father offered him a small job cleaning one of his warehouses. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest and stable employment. Over the years, the janitor worked harder than anyone, determined to honor that chance. Eventually he became responsible for maintaining several buildings owned by my father's company. But the most important thing was that his daughter grew up healthy and strong. She eventually graduated school and dreamed of becoming a teacher someday. The janitor said he visited this grave every year to say thank you. Not because anyone asked him, but because gratitude deserved to be remembered. Listening to that story left me completely speechless for several long moments. I had always admired my father's business intelligence and fearless leadership. Yet I never truly understood the quiet compassion he carried beneath that powerful reputation. The janitor reached into his lunchbox and pulled out the old photograph carefully. It showed a younger version of him standing beside a smiling little girl. Behind them stood my father, placing a supportive hand on the man's shoulder. Seeing that picture made my chest tighten with emotion I could barely describe. All my life I thought I understood the man who raised me. But right there, beside his grave, I realized there were countless untold stories. Stories of kindness that never appeared in newspapers or financial reports. And suddenly I felt incredibly proud of the legacy he quietly left behind. The janitor then said something that truly broke my heart completely. His daughter had passed away 2 months earlier after a sudden illness returned unexpectedly. Doctors tried everything possible, but some battles are simply impossible to win. Since her death, he visited the cemetery often because it felt peaceful. He said this was the only place where memories didn't hurt as much. Standing near my father's grave reminded him of hope instead of tragedy. He believed my father was the reason his daughter experienced a full life. Even if that life ended sooner than anyone ever expected or imagined. As he spoke those words, the evening wind carried silence across the cemetery. I suddenly realized that grief connects strangers in powerful, unexpected ways. And that connection was happening between us at that very moment. I sat beside him on the cold stone bench near the gravestone. For a while we simply watched the sunset fade into deep twilight quietly. Sometimes silence says more than words could ever manage to express properly. I told him my father never mentioned helping a homeless man years ago. The janitor smiled softly and said true kindness rarely needs applause or recognition. That sentence stayed with me longer than anything else he shared that evening. I began seeing my father not only as a billionaire businessman anymore. Instead, I saw him as someone who understood the true value of compassion. Wealth can build skyscrapers, but kindness builds invisible bridges between human hearts. And those bridges often last longer than any building money could create. Before leaving, I asked the janitor what he planned to do next. Without his daughter, life must have felt unbearably empty and lonely. He admitted he didn't know what the future held anymore. But he still came to work every day because responsibility mattered to him. That's when an idea slowly formed inside my mind unexpectedly. I told him my father founded several charities that supported struggling families. However, those programs needed people who truly understood hardship firsthand. Someone who had lived through pain and still chose kindness anyway. The janitor looked confused as I explained my proposal carefully. I offered him a position helping manage those charities across the city. His life experience could guide decisions better than any wealthy executive ever could. At first he refused immediately, insisting he wasn't educated enough for that responsibility. But I reminded him education sometimes comes from surviving life's hardest lessons. His story already proved he possessed compassion, humility, and determination. Those qualities matter far more than fancy degrees hanging inside office walls. Slowly his resistance began softening as he considered the possibility carefully. I told him he wouldn't be alone because our team would help with everything. All he needed to bring was the same heart he showed visiting that grave. After several quiet moments he finally nodded with tears filling his eyes again. Not tears of sadness this time, but tears of renewed purpose. And in that moment I felt certain my father would approve completely. We both stood together beside the gravestone before preparing to leave. The janitor placed fresh flowers next to the ones I had brought earlier. I silently thanked my father for teaching lessons even after his passing. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money, property, or business empires. Sometimes it's the example of how one small act can transform lives forever. That evening reminded me that true wealth lives inside generosity and compassion. As we walked toward the cemetery gate, the janitor looked lighter somehow. For the first time since meeting him, hope replaced the grief in his eyes. And I realized my father's influence was still shaping lives even now. Not through power or wealth, but through the ripple effect of kindness. Moments like this make you think differently about the people around you. You never truly know the battle someone else is quietly fighting every day. A simple act of compassion might become someone's lifeline when everything else fails. My father understood that truth long before I ever did. And meeting that janitor beside his grave revealed a chapter of his life I never knew existed. It reminded me that legacies aren't written only through success or fame. They are written through the lives we touch without expecting recognition or reward. That's a lesson worth remembering every single day of our lives. Especially in a world that sometimes forgets how powerful kindness can truly be. If this story touched your heart or made you think about kindness differently, I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments because your stories matter too. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed listening today. And if you want more powerful stories like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring these meaningful stories to life for everyone watching. Also share this video with someone who might need a reminder about compassion today. Because sometimes a single story can change the way someone sees the world. And who knows, maybe the next act of kindness will come from you.